Okay, I'd like to share with you this final step in the process of writing an annotated bibliography. And when we left off last time, you saw that I had some notes and I also had my source. And so I thought it'd be good for you to see me kind of bumble and fumble my way through, but at least you get an idea of how to do this annotated bibliography, and you can kind of see it in its raw form. So one thing I did when I wasn't with you is I went ahead and highlighted my source, and by right-clicking and going to paragraph, I double-spaced it. So I made sure that the spacing before and after was set to 0, and that my line spacing is set at double spacing, and so that's where I'm at so far. And as I said, what you want to do, actually, darn, I did a little bit more here. Let me go back and make this the way it looked before. There we go. That's the way it looked before. Okay, so what I want to do then is I'll go ahead and double space it now so you can see that. Paragraph, and I want both of these folks before and after at 0 and line spacing at double. Here we go. And I remember what I said is you need to tidy this up a little bit. So one of the things I like to do is I like to go to the Purdue University OWL site, and you can see I was here already. And if you just do a search for OWL and then go to MLA style format, as you know, and we have an electronic source, so I'm going to go ahead and click there. And then I'm going to scroll down, and what I want to be reminded about is how to cite an electronic source from a database, because the Points of View Reference Center is an online database. And here's an example, and I like this first example here because it includes two authors, author 1 and author 2, and I have two authors. And so I'm going to disregard this bottom citation and just highlight and copy this one here, and I'm going to put it in my Word document and then compare what I have here from the Points of View Reference Center with what the OWL site is telling me to do. And so I see that I have last name, comma, first name, comma, and first name, last name. And so I want to change my citation so that it looks just like that. So last name, comma, first name, comma, and Heather Newton. And then so I'm going to change the order of first name, last name there, and put a period, as I can see here, after last name. And then I look to see that the title of the essay or the article is in quotes, and that the title follows the rules for capitalization. So I'm going to compare mine. I've got the title of my article in quotes, and it somewhat follows the rules for capitalization. The P should be capitalized in point, and the A in animals, and the D in deserve. But aha, this T, because it's an article, should be lowercased. Same rights, and then the A in as can be lowercased, I believe. Yep, because it's a preposition. And then I've got a period, and I've got the whole thing within quotes. So I just had to tidy that up a little bit. So check, that's done. Now I see here that in this case, science, the name of the periodical is in italics. And so I'm going to look at what I have here, Points of View Animal Rights, and that's in italics. Now, Points of View, probably the O could be lowercased. Points of View is the name of the database, and I'm pretty sure the O should be lowercase, but I can check that later too. And then I want to look to compare the stuff here. And what I've got is the date, 29th of April 2005, the date written in MLA style format, and next comes a colon to separate the date from the page numbers. So I'm going to compare that to mine. Now, I don't know that I need this fella here, 2013, in parentheses. It's probably okay, folks, if it were in parentheses, but I'm going to just take that out, and then I've got a colon, and then I've got my page number. And in this case, I only have one page number, page 2. Notice there's no P here, as in page 2. It's simply the number that indicates the page. So if I can do a comparison to my OWL reference and this guy, I'm right on track. Next, what follows is the name of the source, and in this case it's Points of View Reference Center. And when I see this, it's just an indication to me that I probably should have made that O and of lowercase, which I did. So I've got that. It's in italics. It's followed by a period, so it matches the OWL site. Next comes the source, and the source is web. And notice web is not in italics. It just stands alone, capital W, lowercase eb, period. So that matches, check. And then the date that I accessed this article, and that's today, the 4th of May. And notice that that date is written in MLA style format, and it's followed by a period. Now I want to make sure then that I have a hanging indent, and I don't see that here with my OWL example, but I know that. I know that I should be flush to the left margin with this first line, and then the second line should be indented, which is what I have. I know that I should be using size 12 font, so I'm going to make that a little bit larger, and that changes my lines a little bit, the number of lines I need. And I'm going to get rid of this guy. I don't need him anymore, although it helped me get started. I'm going to bump my margin over. And now, here where my cursor's blinking, I'm ready to start writing my annotation. Now, before writing my annotation, I read through my notes. And I have in my head now the point that the writers are trying to make. I have in my head these 3 reasons that they're making their points, and that is that moral principles should guide our wanting to protect animals, that animals are sensory creatures, that they're no longer needed, so there's no longer a need for us to exploit them the way we used to. They're not needed as a primary food source, and they're not needed to help us with labor as much as they used to be, that there are folks who support this position. There are other works, and there's a comparison here, not a contrast, but ways that the other works are similar to this work. I know that our author, Heather Newton, is she has a law degree. I don't know that she's a practicing lawyer, but it says here that she has her law degree from Georgetown University Law Center, and so that might influence her bias, or that might indicate her bias, and that the readers of this article are folks who go to the Points of View database, because that's where this was published. So all that, keeping that in mind, I want to just now put that out of my head, so I'm not going to be tempted to be a little too close to my source. And now I want to begin writing. And I probably want to begin writing by introducing the authors and introducing the title of the article, and then sharing some information about it. So Isaac and Newton, and actually let me change the font here so that my eyes and your eyes can see this. So what do I want to say about this? Well, I want to say that these folks support let's see, these folks believe that animals, like humans, should be protected by the law. Actually, should have rights protected by the law. And why? Because, let's see, they should have rights protected by the law because people have a moral responsibility to protect all vulnerable beings, human and non-human. So that was one reason. They believe we have a moral responsibility to protect those who are vulnerable. And if I can try to remember their other point, they believe that animals should be protected by law because, and I forgot it already, folks. Let me go take a peek. Oh, because animals are sensory creatures. Experience pain and emotion. Although they recognize the difficulty of I might have to tidy that up. Although they recognize the difficulty of documenting animals' emotions. In other words, what they try to explain is that while we have research that supports that animals can experience pain, it's harder to get that research to support that animals have emotions. And what we have more than research are anecdotal. We have anecdotal evidence to support that animals can experience emotion. So you might have to play around with that. Okay, so because animals have a moral because people have a moral responsibility to protect vulnerable beings, because animals can experience pain and emotion, maybe because animals are sensory beings that can experience pain and emotion, and because, I had to take a peek, animals they are no longer needed as primary so they're no longer needed as primary food sources or for labor as they were historically. Okay, so Isaac Newton believed that animals, like humans, should have rights protected by the law because people have a moral responsibility to protect all vulnerable beings, because animals are sensory beings that can experience pain and emotion, and because animals are no longer needed as primary food sources or for labor as they once were historically. Okay, so I have the authors, I have their author's point, and that point is supported by some details, and then what I need to include a little bit about the audience, the relationship to other work, and their bias and standpoint. So mention the work of cognitive, what was this guy? Who was this guy? He was a cognitive expert. And who was this other guy? Psychologist. That support their viewpoint. Their view on animal rights. So they mention the works of cognitive experts and psychologists and point out a heightened Okay, so they mention the works of cognitive experts and psychologists and point out a heightened awareness of animal welfare. I'll just leave it at that for now. Newton professor Okay, so Newton, a professor of law, views this topic through a legal lens and groups animals with people in terms of how they deserve to be treated and protected by the law. So Newton, a professor of law, views this topic through a legal lens and groups animals with people in terms of how they deserve to be treated by people and protected by the law. Boy, I'm going to have to tidy that up a little bit. I'm going to have to come up with a new word here probably. That's okay for now. Okay, so let me see how I'm doing in terms of space, because remember this needs to be not too long, right? It needs to be a condensed version. So what I still need to include are the audience. I need to include some information about the audience, and I need to include some information about whether or not my assessment of this article, whether or not I think I'll use it for my purposes, might be included in that. So, so let's see here, this article. This article is This article, whose audience is mainly college students and others who wish to be informed of controversial topics and have access to the points of view database. This article will contains a clearly stated thesis and enough and supporting evidence substantial enough to be useful to writers doing research on this topic. Boy, I don't know if I'm giving you guys a very good example. This article, whose audience is mainly college students and others who wish to be informed of controversial topics and have access to the Point of Views database, contains a clearly stated thesis and supporting evidence substantial enough to be useful to writers doing research on this topic. Okay, not bad for a draft. Maybe not great for a draft, but not bad for a draft. And I have included here, I can get rid of this extra space, I've included, my source, check. I've included an annotation, check. That annotation contains those 6 points that I needed it to contain, which are these points down here. Let me see if I can bring these up by me to be reminded of those. And so I can go through and do another checklist here. I've included the writer's credentials, the main point, the relationship to other work, bias, audience, and summary commentary. I would probably need to tidy this up a little bit, folks, but at least you can see what my annotated bibliography should look like. If I can get Word to cooperate with me, I could probably get rid of that extra space. And this is an example of one. Let me change my view here so you can see it. I'm going to get rid of all my notes. Get rid of all that. Get rid of this probably. This is an example right there of what an annotated bibliography could look like, at least the draft of an annotated bibliography, what it might look like, so that you have an example there and you can see the process and you can recognize that that the value in this, because after doing this process, and this is an indication that I've read the article thoroughly, that I understand the article well, I understand the writer's points well, and that now I have something here to weigh as I'm deciding which 2 articles to use for my paper, and also I can show that I have a good understanding of this article and hopefully I can write about it well when it comes time to write my paper. And with that, folks, I'll end.